Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I am honestly so excited about today's guest because this is someone who I'm convinced that she's an entrepreneur right down to her very bones. It is so clear to me. Everything that I found about today's guest just screams out, yes, not only am I an entrepreneur, not only am I creative and someone who likes building things and someone who likes helping others, but what's really important for me as well as that this is someone who celebrates other entrepreneurs and helps others uplift the meaning and the impact of their work as well. So there's a lot of good stuff that we're going to get into. Let me introduce you to today's guest. Her name is Nica Celly. Nica founded her brand, Nica Celly, all the way back in 2002. And I'll tell you what, I think that we need to celebrate longevity so much more in the world of entrepreneurship. So huge shout out to Nica for being in business since 2002. She founded it as a design answer to a lack of choices in sustainable fashion, from slow textiles to fair labor. Since then, she's endeavored projects of all sizes and scopes, from clothing to branding to website design and now communications, marketing, and brand writing. Trust me, when we talk about writing, Nica and I are going to talk about some trends that we see in the marketplace that we hope are different in 2025 and beyond. With a focus on creating clarity for purpose-driven projects, she's proud to have worked with brilliant minds across all different industries, whether we're talking music, art, contemplative practices, regenerative agriculture, so many industries that it's hard for me to rattle them all off in her bio, but she takes a holistic approach looking at the inside of the business as she redesigns the customer-facing experience. She does deeply meaningful work that we're going to dive into because it impacts all of our businesses. If you're serious about growth this year, then this episode is a treasure trove for you. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Nica Celly. All right, Nica, I am so very excited to have you here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Heck yes. Well, I'm going to kick it right back over to you because you've got to take us beyond the bio. You do so many cool things. I want to hear the backstory. Who's Nica? How'd you start doing all this stuff?
Oh my goodness. I've been reflecting on this for the last few months because I myself am going through a transition with my own business because businesses are evolutionary, right? And I remembered that as a child, I would go down into the neighborhood and ride my bike around. And I noticed that my mother actually had this spider plant and it had all these babies. And so what I did as like a 5-year-old is I started clipping the babies off of the spider plants and then selling them on my bike in the neighborhood. And that was followed by an interest in textiles. And I always wanted to be a fashion designer. And so then I started doing door-to-door order forms for clothes. Just to say, fast forward 20 years, that's what I did for a job, where I would like remix deadstock clothes out of hip hop warehouses where they store all the tour t-shirts that they couldn't sell. And then I started remixing those into women's clothes. And through that process, I really learned how to build a business. And it's been a ride ever since, to be honest. Yeah. And so now I do branding, holistic branding, and really help people get their businesses from V1 to V2. And that's what we're here to chat about today. So that's the origins. It starts early, right? Like all these entrepreneurs, all these people who are listening, you had it really early, you felt it. Yeah. So harnessing that in this moment in life again and again.
Yes, I love that overview, Nica, especially because you heard me in the very top of today's episode shout out the fact that you've been in business since 2002. I want to call that out because you just dropped a huge hint of success there in your overview, which is because you are so willing to evolve. And I think that evolution, we don't talk about it enough. We don't celebrate it enough. We don't teach it or preach it enough in the world of entrepreneurship, as so many people, and I'll go back. I'm going to throw a little bit of shade right now, Nica, is that I'll go back all the way to business school, and professors convince us we need to have a 10-year business plan and we need to know what it's going to look like. Nica, I've been in business since 2008, a little less time than you, but both of us have been in the game for quite some time. And gosh, since 2008, I would have never guessed that one thing led to another. I just had to roll with it. Talk to us about that evolutionary process. We need to talk about it more.
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm really noticing that people have these emergent experiences. If you've been in business for 5 years and you've been practicing and treating your business like a living entity, which it is, right? So we don't want to graft a 10-year plan necessarily onto small businesses because we really don't know what the fluctuations in the market, with audiences, with climate change, with all the things that are happening. Other factors are going to come into what you're up to. Right? And some idea is going to emerge that's going to move the business forward. So we have to stay alert to that, and we have to build practices in so that we can pay attention to it. So a lot of my work is really a fusion of yoga practices into the business and observing what we're up to so that we know and can stay consistent amidst all the changes, both outside and also on the inside. So when inspiration strikes, you can actually have the space to look at it, see how it can affect the revenue channel, see how it can affect the mission statement, the vision, and the purpose of the business, and really give the business a space to evolve, right? Because we're not going to be the same person. One of the best pieces of advice that I received when I was working in hip hop as like someone in my early 20s, my boss Domino at Hieroglyphics, he said to me, if you're the same when you're 30 as you were when you were 20, you got a problem. And if you're the same when you're 40 as you were when you were 30, we got to have a conversation. And that was something that I heard so early, and it really stuck with me. Who we are today is not going to be who we are in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. And if we can pay attention to that and allow that person to grow, then we allow what needs to stay, and what needs to go. So that's my feeling about that. So
Nica,
big deep bows to the early inspirations and mentors. I can't.
Honestly, because that's huge advice. And I feel like, here's the thing, the amazing thing for me about that advice that you got early on is that I feel like societally, we actually tend to give the opposite advice. I remember when I went to college, I started my first business the summer after my freshman year of college. And then, a year later, I would go back to my home.
That business was? Can you just tell me what that business was?
Yeah, it was a soccer blog. And I just did it kind of like you talking about the spider plants. I did it for fun. I was a kid and I really love soccer and I love writing and I love the internet. So I started writing about soccer on the internet. And it's funny because when I would go back to my hometown, people would be like, oh, you've changed. And as if it was negative, Nica. And for me, I was like, of course I did. I see possibilities. I see the world through a different lens. I have thousands of people coming to my website every day. Like I'm serving fellow soccer aficionados like myself. And so that really drove me. And I think the point is to change. It's so funny to me that we act like that's a negative. So Nica, with that in mind, I can see all the different influence of your life manifesting. I mean, I've never heard someone go from yoga to talking about top line revenue metrics in one such cohesive sentence. But I joke about that because I'm going to use you as a really great example. We always hear that term thrown around of holistic, whether it comes to holistic branding or holistic marketing or holistic business health. A lot of people want to say it, Nica. It seems to me like you actually practice, and I want to hear your thoughts on that because I know that you're also very intentional with your words, and it's clear to me that you're able to weave in all these different facets of your life, of your passions into the way that you operate. So what's holistic branding? When we get to the root of it, what's it actually mean to you?
Okay, so when people come to branding and they say, I want you to rebrand my business, a lot of the times they're talking about very surface level things. They're talking about logos, they're talking about colors, which is very important, but we don't know what that logo and that color will be until we know what you're up to. So I start off with deep interview systems that allow me to understand where you're at with your business. And I think this is important for anybody who's starting a business. We need to know what we're up to, why we're doing it, and what impact we want to have, because that defines the audience that we're talking to, right? But deeper than that, we have this conversion process. And when I say we, I mean me and the people I work with, where we dive deep into the center of it. We develop the whys, of course, the brand writing, the narrative, the story, the anthem, the manifesto, what have you. And then we start to turn it towards the customer. So a lot of the times we think we're doing a business for us. And really, we're not doing a business for us. We're doing it for the customer. We're doing it for the client. We're doing it for the audience. And we have to find ways to craft all of that for yourself so that you stay clear and centered in what you're up to. And then also for the client so they can take engagement opportunities to be with you, to purchase or to, to sign up for your services and to make it accessible. Pricing strategies, product pricing strategies, giving things away for free and why, this kind of stuff. We answer all these questions so that the day that we launch and we press play, if you will, we know exactly what we're up to and why, and they can understand it. And so it's inside, outside. So for a lot of companies, I offer them like full internal branding documents so that anyone they hire and as they grow, they can keep referring to it so that they don't forget. When you're engaged in your business, you might forget exactly how to do what and what you're up to, right? Especially if you're one person or two people, and you might need those agreements to keep going in a way that's fluid and keep people coming towards you and keep that conversation going and keeping that mission blooming.
Yeah. I love that verb choice.
Can I step back for 1 second to something that you said that really got me? Okay. You said that when you started the blog, people said that you changed. Okay. I'm going to give another shout. I have to give another shout out for an organization that no longer exists, but is how I learned about independent business, called Women's Initiative for Self-Employment. And it was in Oakland, California in the 90s and the 2000s. And what they did was they helped women who were low income break into business. And at the time I qualified, so I took it, and I actually was temping for them because I was so young. I just gotten out of college and moved to Oakland. And so when I was temping for them, they said, the first thing they said is, when you start to get success, people will start to be mad at you. And how you deal with that and that grace that you give yourself and that you give your community is going to make all the difference in your work. And I feel like that is one of the most important things, because if you don't allow yourself to evolve, if you don't allow that mission that's coming through you or that purpose that's coming through you to be met, then you're denying the outcome. So you can't necessarily listen to what we call now the haters, but they're actually being challenged, and people are being challenged to step up into independence and outside of the late stage capitalism. Like if you have an independent business, you are fighting against late stage capitalism, right? And that's what's happening right now. So you have the opportunity to lift others up just by sheer force of what you're doing with your life. And that is the most beautiful thing. So people will be like, I don't understand that. But then they'll be like, hey, Brian did that blog, remember? I think I'm going to share a message like that too. And then we have the ripple that's in our business, but also in our communities. So if we can be patient around that and around other people's reactions, then we can actually inspire people without doing anything extra. So I just want to say that. Thank you for giving me the space to say that.
No,
that's a
Nica,
big piece. That's a big piece of making yourself at peace with what you're doing.
Yeah, and thank you for saying it. I've got all the goosebumps right now as you're saying that, because here's the thing, Nica, you and I have both lived this. We're not just talking about these things conceptually in today's episode, is that we've both lived it. I remember when I started this show, in my head, I had 1 million people on my college campus from my hometown, people around me, some who cared about me and some who didn't care about me, but nonetheless, a lot of people were giving me all the reasons why it wouldn't work. And so with this show, one of my commitments is 5 days a week, you're going to have incredible people sharing with you all the ways why it will work and all the ways why you are limitless and you are expansive. And so, Nica, it's guests like you that shine that light. And that's why I said in the intro that you also love fellow entrepreneurs. And I so appreciate that about you. And
yeah, thank you.
I want to pick on a verb that you use there. I think it's so revealing about your mindset, not just the way you do business, but when you talk about branding, you talked about your brand blooming and hearing that, there's life to it. It's something that grows. It's something that fosters. Nica, when I hear the way you talk about branding, it seems to me like you believe branding is a continuous thing. Whereas, again, I'm going to throw a little bit of shade in today's episode because I think there's a lot of beauty in the contrasts. I feel like traditionally we talk about branding as something we figure out, a problem that we solve, and that is a finite period of time. Whereas when you're talking about it, branding is something that's always there, something that we're always doing that yields itself in our pricing strategies, in our marketing strategies, in all these other ways, which of course comes back to your concept of a business is a living entity. All of these things are always moving, just like we are personally. Talk to me about that approach. It just seems so different to me.
Well, I think the word branding is problematic in and of itself. Okay. Like a brand is something that you do to a cow. Okay. That's like where it comes from, right? It's mine, right? There's an ownership piece around it. But what branding has evolved into, and as words change and become more inclusive and maybe even become vague, you know, you can ask me about optimize your potential and dead marketing words later if you'd like, or evolving marketing words. If I really want to be generous, that's me throwing shade. But there's this way that the brand, when people engage with your brand, they're engaging with your business, the whole of it. So and consumers and audiences have a very short attention span, and they are very ready to critique. So it behooves us all to be in super alignment with what we're doing, from everything from the, you know, of course, the colors and fonts and that level of visual communication. I have an art background, so I want to align with that as much as possible and obey those rules, because there are certain ways that communicates that other things can't. But you communicate through your strategy. You communicate through the pricing that you offer your clients. You communicate through your pro bono offerings. I have a teacher that for a very long time was giving away 30% of her trainings so that there was more access. Her business exploded. She's an inspiration to me. She has been a client of mine in some respects, but you know, when I saw her giving away 30% of her trainings and free classes to people who otherwise wouldn't have access, not as necessarily as a strategy, but as a core principle of her business, she's huge. She's exploded. She has a multi-million-dollar business now, and it has so much meaning and it affects so many lives. So that is also part of your branding, right? And how you tell your story and the original language that you use, that allows you to be something not just different to differentiate, because of course we all want to be different. We all want to differentiate away from like the big behemoths, but also just to share your character and who you are. And that uniqueness of your offering. So even if you're selling pencils, right? Maybe it's a very similar pencil to the number 2, the classic, if anybody even uses pencils anymore, dare I say. But the way that you do the business itself, like think Tom shoes, or like they're just, they're espadrilles, basically. They're cool. But the way that he did business allowed him and them, all the people in that business and all the people who were affected, to start doing eyeglasses, right? Like that was a huge shift in the marketplace for people to think, whoa, I can actually help people through the business. So the way that we do that is really important. And the way that we share that story is really important. We want to sort of make sure that there's not cracks in the facade, but we don't want any cracks in the actual way that the business is done. And I can go off about that with fashion too, because that's a huge piece. The days of saying that you're eco, but then sort of outsourcing and greenwashing another part of your business to make that profitable, those days are over. We don't have the capacity for that anymore. If anyone's in fashion or merchandising, I think they know what I'm talking about. So happy to go there at some other moment. But yeah, that's my story. Integrity. It's called integrity. Are all 4 wheels on the road at the same time? Let's make sure it's in good working order. That's branding.
Yeah. And I'll tell you this, even as someone who's not inside of the world of fashion, yes, a lot of us are aware of some very mainstream brands who say one thing but mean the other. And that's why I'm going to use that as a natural segue, Nica, because I'm so excited for you to call this out, because you can do this way better than I can. And you even have a beautiful term to wrap around it, which is dead marketing words. Holy cow. Nica, actually, before I even kick things back to you, I'm going to make a very public confession here, is that we behind the scenes, so obviously we have an incredible incredible pre-production team that proactively reaches out to people who we want to have on the show. And that's why we were so excited to invite you on the show, is because we find amazing entrepreneurs doing impactful, real work. Big stress on the word real there, is because there's a lot of stuff that isn't real in the world, and especially in the world of business, because people are motivated by a lot of other things and not always the best of motives. And so with that in mind, we see so much fluff out there, so much stuff that we say, this isn't real. And a lot of that, Nica, I will publicly confess to you, is the words that people choose. We've gotten fed up of when we go to someone's website and they say, we are the most innovative and revolutionary solution when it comes to this system. And we read through their website and we say, what do you do? What exactly is it? You call that dead marketing words, and you don't like the up leveling, all these different things that people say. Please guide us down this path and talk to listeners about what those words are and how the heck and why we should avoid them in our businesses.
Oh my goodness, I just need to take a breath on that. Can we just take a collective breath on that? Just inhale it and exhale out. Unlocking your potential. We'll start with that one, because I had a conversation about this the other day with a coach, because coaches love to say, unlock your potential. Well, guess what? Your potential was never locked in the first place. It wasn't locked. And now I'm doing the same thing that, razors for women did in the 1930s. Like, you didn't even know you had a problem. Now you've got a problem, and we're going to fix it. We're going to identify a problem that you didn't even know you had, which is actually not really a problem. It's just a way for us to break into the women's market with razors, right? So this is like an age-old thing. And the last whispers of it are coming in now. So like, unlocking your potential suggests a problem that you don't even have. And it creates promises and dependencies on the business that you're as a customer, as you're engaging those business services. You're already coming in weak. Do you want your customers to come in weak? I don't think so, right? You want to make your customers feel strong. You want to make them feel included. You want to make them feel like they're opening themselves up into new extensions of themselves, right? And I think that there's this way that people got really into SEO for good reason, right? It is a tool, but the repetition dissolves the meaning of the words. And just like I mentioned earlier, like with branding, like what does branding mean now, right? It actually means so much. And we have to be really precise so that we can communicate clearly. Because if you say, I want to unlock your potential, or if you say, I see something in you and I want to help you grow. Like Marie Forleo is an incredible example of this in the celebrity coaching world. She says, I think it's something to the effect of, there's something special in each person, and we're going to find out what that is. That's not exactly what she's saying. That's not her tagline, but there's essentially you have a gift that's uniquely yours, and we're going to blow it up and make it big. And that just empowers the customer, the client, the audience. We want to empower people right now. There is a lot going on. And to say the least, even when people say there's a lot going on or what's really going on, the world is at a juncture point. We know this politically, environmentally. We can't deny that at this point. And so now is a beautiful time to empower people and use words that sort of access different parts of their brain so that they can make unique choices, unique words, unique choices, unique expressions of life, unique expressions of business, unique expressions of engagement with your customers. So there's opportunity here when we expand our language, I think we all read 1984 in 8th grade, and there was limited language. What a scary thing, yeah? So let's improve our ways of communication so that we become more connected and curious, like you. So thank you for being curious. No, thank you for asking these questions. This is great. Thank you.
Thank you, Nica. I'll tell you where my head goes hearing you talk about this stuff is because I've often been accused of being the eternal optimist, and it's certainly true for a lot of regards. Right. And here's the thing, Nica, hearing you talk about these things, what I would imagine, part of being a podcast host is I always just think about what would a contrarian think so that we can address it while we're here together because they're listening to this episode. And I guess the contrarian thinking here would be, well, it's not all rainbows and butterflies, you guys. And here we are. We're talking, I mean, we're two entrepreneurs who have been at this for almost 2 decades, each of us. And so with that in mind, almost 40 years of entrepreneurial experience. Feels weird, the two of us saying that together, Nica, but here we are. And so with that in mind, I think to myself of that quote, it's one of the most impactful quotes I've ever heard, which is, we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. And so hearing you talk in this way, Nica, I think to myself, well, of course you've been in business since 2002. Of course you've navigated all of the twists and turns and pivots along the way because you see things through these positive lens and you believe in uplifting others in the real sense of the word is being a positive change agent. And that's how I feel. And that's why when people say you're an eternal optimist, I say, well, yeah, because I believe in the betterment of myself and those around me, and I'm going to work my butt off in order to make that happen. And so with that in mind, there's so many things that I want to talk to you about, Nica, and time's flying by, but I want to give the stage because I would imagine that a lot of your perspective and expertise and experiences come from your clients. And what's really appealing to me about your business is that so many people want to always focus on what's new, the exciting, shiny new things. And we're all guilty of that in the world of business, but you work with a lot of older clients as well. And I would imagine that process of working with them and alongside them and learning and growing with them. That's what people don't understand about service-based businesses. Nica, give us some of those insights.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Youth is not a prize. Living a long life and having many chapters is the most incredible opportunity you could ever have, right? So you asked a few different things. I'm going to give a shout out to all my clients because they are really spectacular people. And anybody who, like, if you come to my website, they are unique people that have been through so many chapters. And the eldest of them is, and the eldest, though he looks the youngest, to be honest, has been through so many business changes where he has a product-based business. He deals in incredible fine art and design objects. And he has seen businesses when he was a partner in a business and it was sold, and then it was rebought and he was rehired, and then he had to start his own. All of these chapters, when you speak to these people, their level of knowledge and wisdom around their craft, because it takes, I don't know, maybe Malcolm Gladwell said once, like 10,000 hours. When you put 100,000 hours into your craft, it's beyond any degree that you can get. And the time spent and what it then speaks back to you, that's the other thing. When you practice business, I'm just going to segue into the business piece. When you practice business for so long, and then you have the opportunity to have the business talk back to you, and you're not running it. Not that it's running you and you are, like it's subordinate, or it's, it's not like that. But when you build a relationship so much that it starts to have a life where it starts to speak back to you and your genius is sealed and you have that piece, which I call legacy, and legacy is a little bit of a problematic word, but what you can offer to the next, not even the next generation, but just your own generation and your friends and your people and your community, the ingenuity to reinvent yourself over and over again, out of need or out of desire, it doesn't matter, has such an incredible ripple effect. Again, just like the brand has the ripple effect over time, so does you as the business owner and you as a person in your community, as someone who might have originally had many, many questions and much hustle and now has literally all the answers, just from the practice of being in business that long. Yeah. So that's what I have to say to that.
Nica, I'm going to push you further then. Yeah, because here's the thing. Every answer brings up new possibilities for us to explore together. You use that word practice so intentionally. I will say, as someone who hasn't practiced yoga as much as I always say, like, that would be fun to get into yoga. I feel like all the best people that I know all are into yoga in some capacity. Nica, it's always stood out to me, though, that when I play tennis, the verb is I play tennis. When I go for a bike ride, I go for a bike ride. We have so many verbs verbs of just doing things, and we do them one way or another with an outcome. Yoga is a little bit more inviting for those of us who don't do yoga, because I don't have to do yoga, because I'm not going to do it perfectly my first time, Nica, or my 10th time, or my 100th time.
Can I interrupt you? I'm so sorry, Brian.
No, go ahead. Please do.
You said the most important thing that I tell my clients. I'm bad at that. Or I don't do that because I'm not good at it, or I won't do it perfect the first time. Guess what? Because you haven't done it yet. You haven't done it yet. How could you do it perfect the first time? Okay, so I just need to say that, like, there's no bad at this or bad at that. And that's the beauty of the practice, right? That's the beauty of what you practice. Medicine is a practice. It's not a business. You don't say, I'm like a doctor, I'm going to go into business. You're like, I'm going to start a practice.
I love that. I'm going to push you further. And I want to interject as well. When people give me kudos for 1,000+ episodes of this podcast, they're like, oh, you're a natural. It's my least favorite compliment, Nica, is being called a natural. Because I'm like, I'm not a natural. Go listen to episode 1. It was objectively terrible. I was so low energy. I was trying to sound like what I thought a podcaster sounded like. And it wasn't until I stepped into my own voice and my own energy and enthusiasm and excitement and all of these things that it came here. And so that's where I want to give you the stage back. I want you to talk about practice, because I don't think enough people understand practicing things. We expect to just do them.
Oh my God, I love your questions so much. I want to share it as a story, if that's all right. I was sitting with my brother. My brother's like a hyper athlete. He's a surfer. He was a rock climber. He's a biker. Now he's like a dirt biker. And he said, you know the difference between you and me? He's like, I'm into performance achievement and you're into practice. And they're two different things. And it really stuck with me. This was about maybe like 8 years ago. Because I was like, why do you have to surf? Why do you have to get the highest wave? Can't you just enjoy being in the water? I think that's how it started. Maybe because I'm scared to surf, right? But ultimately, I realized that you can have a practice of performance achievement if you wanted to. But the point is that you show up every day. That's the difference between a practice and performance achievement. Performance achievement, you train for this pinnacle moment, right? And practice is you just show up every day and you just poco a poco, as we say down here, just little by little. And eventually it accumulates. And as it accumulates, just like I mentioned earlier with my client, the wisdom accumulates, the knowledge accumulates, things become easier, and it starts to speak to you. If anybody here who's listening practices yoga and has practiced yoga for like maybe a year, I bet your chaturanga looks really different than it did day one. And you start to learn about your body in a different way. And the same goes in a lot of ways for a business. You show up, you write those newsletters, you share your thoughts, just like you, Brian, like showing up and doing these podcasts and allowing your voice to come through. Your life starts to speak back to you. And that is the most incredible exchange. And then all of a sudden it becomes this weaving of your work and your purposeful life, right? Like if we want to get woo-woo, or as I like to say, woo-woo tang on it, that's real. You know, you practice and you show up and you dedicate yourself. And then you start to have a different kind of relationship with yourself and what you're up to. And that, again, ripples out through your business, through your community, through your life.
Yes, so beautifully said. Honestly, I feel like it pertains, you're right, all of this stuff we're talking about, apply it to business, apply it to podcasting, apply it to content creation, apply it to life, to relationships. Because Nica, when I hear that feedback of people of, oh, you're natural when it comes to podcasting, I kind of joke with them ever since we passed episode 1000. I'm like, do anything 1,000 times and you'll seem like you're a natural. Like I was not, you wouldn't have said that in my first 100 episodes. I guarantee it to everybody who says it. So I love the emphasis that you place on this. Nica, time has flown by. I'm excited to ask you this last question that I always ask people. It's super broad, and in your case, I feel like there's power in the broad questions because your mind works in incredibly beautiful ways. So that question that I always ask at the end of episodes is, what's your best piece of advice? You've already given us so many incredible pieces of advice, but knowing that we're being listened to by both wantrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their business growth journeys, what's that one thing that you want to impart on them today?
So for today, because it's today and the world is a certain way and maybe we are changing and there's fluctuations all around us in our mind and in the world, the one piece of advice I have for people who are either starting or continuing or doing anything at all, honestly, is to keep a steady light inside and to take a breath, remember what you're up to, and just stay steady with yourself.
Yes, I love that advice. Nica, what I really appreciate about that advice is, again, just the way you talk about business, branding, anything, is that it's not advice for just this moment. It's advice for us to continue to come back to and remind ourselves of in all of those present moments. So it's incredibly powerful advice. Nica, with all of that in mind, we just scratched the tip of the iceberg of your expertise here today. And I know that listeners are going to be keen to go deeper into the wonderful world of all the things that you're doing. Your website is loaded with your creativity, with your view on branding, on businesses, on messaging, on how you help others live. We talked about me finding my podcasting voice here today, that you help business owners in all industries, not just content creators, literally in all industries do that. So with all of that in mind, drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Oh, thank you so much. It's nicacelly.com, NICACELLY.com for all business stuff. And yogacraft.org is a new project that I'm doing that fuses yoga practice and art and offerings and gets really weird. So it's super fun. Yeah. Thank you so much, Brian. This has been such a pleasure, and you are awesome, and you're mastering your craft, and I bow to you, and thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for all of that, all of the wisdom and brilliance that you've shared with us here today. Listeners, you already know the drill. We're making it as easy as possible for you to find all of those links down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. So, Nica, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thank you again so much for coming on the show.
Have a beautiful day. Be well.